Hey folks, time to crack open a new series I've been batting around for a while now. I've been playing a lot of Dungeons & Dragons lately, and have always been a fan of fantasy. One of the things I was curious about though, is where some of these concepts that show up over and over again in fantasy come from. So to kick off the series, I'm going to find out what a Paladin is. I'm Tristan Johnson, and this is Step Back History. For those not down with fantasy games, the Paladins are portrayed as holy warriors, a knight who wields a big hammer and holy magic. So it might not surprise you the Paladins were knights. Their name comes from the Latin word Palatine, which in the Roman Empire was a word for a government official. Paladin was the name for members of the Round Table for the legendary King Charlemagne. Okay, so Charlemagne was an important figure in European history. The collapse of the Roman Empire shattered Europe. Charlemagne is famous for conquering enough land to claim he could be the new emperor of a Catholic Roman Empire. The Pope crowned him, and he became the Holy Roman Emperor. Today, he's considered a founding figure for Western Europe, especially for France and Germany. So Charlemagne is quite a big figure in Western Christianity. His knights were then also considered important for the whole Christianity thing. There are a lot of legends written about these paladins. Some true, but many, many more likely fiction. The first use of the word is in reference to not the companions of Charlemagne, but one of his vassals named Roland. We don't know much about him, except he was a lord who died in the Battle of Roncesvalles Pass in 778. This battle was an important one. The Franks fought against the Basques in a pass in the Pyrenees Mountains. The Franks lost and is one of Charlemagne's only defeats. However, they consider it an epic defeat, like a medieval Alamo, and it cemented Roland and his paladins as legends. It's all written down in a 12th century book called the Song of Roland, one of the oldest pieces of French literature in existence. The Paladins then had fictional stories told about their exploits in a number of events. Some would be based on the famous 8th century exploits of the Frankish Empire, such as their clash with the Umayyad Al-Andalus, documented in the book called the Marca Hispania. This was a period in which most of Spain was the territory of Muslims from the Kingdom of Al-Andalus. And so the Paladins gained even more of a reputation as bold warriors of the Christian cause. These stories then ballooned into a cast of characters known as the 12 Peers, or the 12 Paladins of Roland. There's Oliver, Roland's best friend, Gerin, Gerier, Grandolie, Bangier, Anton, Samson, Engier, Yvon, Ivoire, Ancet, and Girard. The names and membership of the 12 Peers changed at different points, but the number did stay at 12. It's an important number in Christian symbology. During the Italian Renaissance, the stories of the Paladins were a craze. The Italian version of William Shakespeare, Matteo Maria Boiardo, and Ludovico Ariosto wrote plays and books and poems about the Paladins. Their list of paladins turned Oliver into a rival of Roland. A couple were Muslims who converted to Christianity, a sorcerer, the Duke of Bavaria, and Ganelon the Betrayer. The character of Ganelon appears in the famous Dante's Inferno. This would be the peak for Paladin stories. Charlemagne's stories went into decline, probably due to the whole Protestant thing. And the term Paladin began to become a word for any chivalrous hero. The English borrowed these stories and made their own famous king with a round table of knights. Yeah, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table are based on Charlemagne and the Paladins. In the 19th century, poets, artists, and authors wrote a lot of new material about King Arthur and his knights, but Charlemagne didn't get the same attention, which gave King Arthur the fame, and the Paladins relative obscurity. I should mention J.R.R. Tolkien found out about this and was shocked to find that English mythology was of all things French. His Middle-earth work was a way to build an original English mythology. Stories about the Carolingian knights have faded into obscurity, but Paladins still exist as a term for chivalrous knights. Paladins are in every fantasy video game today, however, thanks to Dungeons & Dragons. The D&D Paladin is a holy warrior, playing up all those legends about great historic knights of chivalry, but also with touches of the image of the Crusader and the Knights Templar. One such addition is the hammer. Often depictions of paladins in fantasy includes hammers. This comes from the Crusades, when priests joining in would use a mace or hammer instead of a sword, supposedly because they couldn't draw blood. I tried to look up how true this was, but I couldn't get it verified. So, the fantasy paladin comes from early medieval knights who fought for the holiest empire in Christian history, who then had many fictional tales told about them throughout the centuries. Mix that with the image of Christian crusaders, Templars, Hospitallers, Teutonic Knights, and you have the modern day paladin. Oh, I should mention, I pitched the idea of this series to Patrick from the channel Name Explains. If you click on the thingy or in the description, you'll find out why they call hobbits halflings in Dungeons & Dragons. Also, I'd love to return to this series. What fantasy staple do you want me to investigate next? Tell me down in the comments. Make sure to subscribe and push the bell notification so my videos roll high initiative. I'd like to thank all of these wonderful chivalrous patrons, especially Sir Carrie the Bold and Lady Dawn the Indomitable. You're making this all possible. Now, grab another Diet Pepsi and roll a history check for the next Step Back.